This is the Thermarest NeoLoft. It's the thickest and arguably the most comfortable sleeping pad on the market. And this is the Nature Hike 8.8. It costs less than half the price, is almost just as thick, and has the potential to be more comfortable. So the question is, can the Nature Hike compete with the NeoLoft, especially when it comes to the three pillars of sleeping pad comfort: warmth, pressure relief, and stability? Today, I'm gonna be testing these pads side by side in order to find out.
The Thermarest NeoLoft has a price of $250, weighs 833 grams on my scale, and has an R value of 4.7. Its advertised thickness is 4.6 inches and its width is 26 inches, and both of those lined up with my measurements at home. It uses a horizontal baffling system and a stretch fabric on top for the shell material, and then uses thermocapture technology on the inside in order to provide insulation. The Nature Hike pad costs $115, weighs 657 grams, and has an R value of 8.8. Its thickness is advertised as being 4.7 inches thick, but when I measure it at home, it's only 4.3 inches. Its advertised width is accurate though at 25 inches. It uses a dimpled baffling construction and then a patented thermal design in order to provide insulation.
In order to test the pads, I'm gonna be completing 4 side-by-side qualitative assessments of ease of use, warmth, stability, and pressure relief. This is gonna complement the experience that I have with both these pads on their own on various trips. So let's outline the test and then jump right into it.
Ease of use can be tested by looking at 3 things: how easy the pad is to inflate using the inflation valve, how easy it is to roll up and put away the pad, and whether the pack size makes it easy to store your pack while hiking. The second test, pressure relief, is probably the second most important test I will be completing. It will involve looking at 4 factors: how well the baffling system of the pad helps relieve pressure, especially when side sleeping, the ability of the shell material to provide pressure relief, which is often in the form of some sort of stretchiness or give, how much you need to deflate the pad in order to achieve good pressure relief, ideally not at all because R value is maximized when a pad is fully inflated, and then 4, whether the pad is also supportive while sleeping on your back. It can be difficult to have a pad that's both good on your back and while you're on your side. Stability will be tested by seeing what sort of edge support the pads have. I will lay close to the edges and see how much it feels like I'm going to roll off or fall off the pads. I'll also test how balloony the pads feel by moving around from my side to my back and all over the pad. The fourth test, warmth, will be a bit more involved with me A/B testing the pads throughout the night. I will spend 1 hour on each pad to start and rotate between the pads every 2 hours for another 8 hours. I'll be using a Thermarest Boost 650 sleeping bag with a comfort rating of 0 degrees Celsius for my top insulation, which should be warm enough for the above freezing temperatures I'm expecting. I'll pay attention to whether I feel any cold spots on the sleeping pads and how I might be feeling my warmth being captured by the pads and reflected back to me.
For ease of use, neither of these pads is great. When it comes to inflation and deflation, Thermarest has 2 valves. There's an inflation valve on one side and then a big deflation dump valve on the other side. That being said, there's so much material inside this pad that it's really tough to deflate it. You actually have to roll it up once and then unroll it before you can fold it and then fully put it away. Inflation's pretty easy with the wing lock valve, and it's nice that pretty much every pump on the market has an attachment for it, which is nice because you don't want to be blowing up such a big pad with your mouth. The Nature Hike has 1 valve with 2 flaps. You open up the first flap in order to inflate it, and then you open up the second flap in order to dump all the air. Deflating the Nature Hike is a little bit easier because there is a little bit less material inside of it, which I think is going to factor into the warmth test. Inflation's also pretty easy. A lot of pumps have an attachment for the Nature Hike, which again, I think is necessary because it's such a big pad as well. When it comes to pack size, the Thermarest is definitely a big, bulky pad, but not as big as you would think considering how big of a pad it is and how much material is involved with putting this pad together. The Nature Hike, on the other hand, is much more compact, which is nice if you don't have a ton of space inside your pack. For the warmth and comfort test, I'm gonna complete the A/B testing overnight, and then tomorrow morning I'll let you know the results of those tests. Testing of the 2 pads last night got pretty interesting because they both didn't really fit inside the tent, so I had to get a little bit creative when shifting from one pad to the other pad. But overall, I think I got some pretty good results differentiating these 2 pads when it comes to comfort and warmth. The first comfort factor is pressure relief, and these 2 pads are using different methods in order to try and relieve pressure when you're sleeping on them. The NeoLoft uses horizontal baffles, which aren't usually very good for pressure relief, but it pairs them with a very stretchy top material. And that stretchy top material is actually pretty good at providing pressure relief. Whereas the Nature Hike doesn't really have any stretch to it at all, but uses a dimpled baffling pattern that is really effective at pressure relief because each of the raised areas acts as an individual spring, which is really good at isolating pressure for things like your hips or your shoulders. Overall, the Nature Hike does have a better baffling system for pressure relief, but the NeoLoft is pretty good when it comes to pressure relief as well, due to that stretchy material, especially when you have it a little bit deflated. And that's an interesting aspect for both of these pads because they're quite thick, so you can deflate them in order to increase your comfort. I found that with the Nature Hike, I was comfortable when I deflated it down to about 70%. That was a good balance of having it deflated a little bit, but not so much that I was bottoming out. With the NeoLoft, I found the sweet spot to be at about the 60% inflated mark, and that's pretty crazy. That's a lot of air being let out of the pad. Another factor with comfort is support, and it's a little bit different than pressure relief because I find with pressure relief, it's more about decreasing the likelihood of a limb going numb and falling asleep, whereas support is decreasing the likelihood of you kind of getting back pain or things like that while you're sleeping. And with both pads, they're really solid at providing support for both when you're laying on your back or when you're laying on your side. I found the NeoLoft provided a little bit more support when I was laying on my back for some reason, but I'm not quite sure why, and the Nature Hike was still pretty good. The reason these pads are so good from a support perspective is because of how thick they are. They can really contour to your body and support it. Overall, both these pads are really comfortable, even though they're achieving that comfort in different ways. The NeoLoft and the stretchy material that it has, I think is gonna be preferable to most people out there, but definitely don't underestimate the pressure relief of the Nature Hike. Another aspect of these pads I tested out was stability, and with the Nature Hike, it has really good stability. You don't feel like you're on a balloon when you're shifting positions and moving around on the pad, and then that support continues as you get close to the edge of the pad. You never feel like you're gonna fall off the pad. The same can't be said for the NeoLoft. It definitely feels a little bit more like you're laying on a balloon, especially when you have it fully deflated down to that 60% level. And then when you start moving close to the edge of the pad, it doesn't really hold support and you do feel like you're gonna fall off a little bit. When it comes to warmth, the overnight low last night was 1 degree Celsius and both pads did pretty well. With both the NeoLoft and the Nature Hike, I felt my heat being radiated back to me. But with the NeoLoft, I didn't feel any cold spots, even when the temperature got down to its lowest. But with the Nature Hike, I did feel one cold spot when the temperature dipped to its lowest, right around my hip where I was really compressing the pad. Thermarest is kind of the benchmark when it comes to R values, and the NeoLoft is living up to its high 4s R value, whereas the Nature Hike is definitely not an 8.8 R value when it's pegged against the Thermarest, and I'd say it's more in the mid 4s. As a conclusion, both pads are really comfortable, but I think more people will like the NeoLoft. That being said, I think the Nature Hike is better for my personal body shape and sleeping style. If you're only sleeping down to about freezing or warmer, then either pad is gonna keep you warm. But if you are dipping down to below freezing temperatures, then I think you'd want to go with the NeoLoft. Go check out this video if you want to see how to get the most out of your backpacking stove. Things like whether to use a lid or not, whether you should increase the diameter of your pot, and whether turning the valve down actually affects stove performance.